What's up, guys? I hope you're all doing well. It's Stephen Freeborn here from My Dad Life, and I'm actually right now at my mom's. So that's kind of become a thing every weekend where since Cal's been born, we kind of make the rounds to all the grandparents and try to make sure they all get their fair share in time with Cal, since the week's busy, everybody's working, and not everybody always gets a chance to catch up with him. And he's kind of like the favorite person right now in the family, which I understand. He's pretty cute. Um, but what you guys are getting ready to watch is the latest episode that I did for the My Dad Life podcast. It was with a friend of mine named Jeff Shapiro, who lives in Chicago. So we actually did the interview over the phone, and so the video's a screen capture of essentially our conversation via FaceTime. Please show me some forgiveness because it was my first time recording something over the phone using FaceTime, which mutes when the other person's talking, and so there are some parts where the audio cuts out or it sounds like you can't hear what Jeff's saying, but that's my fault, not his. But it's a really great interview. He's got lots of great to share. Jeff owns a gym in Chicago called Spindle Fitness, and I first met Jeff about a year ago in July when I attended a business event there put on. And then I've since been back to visit Spindle once more when I went to training in Chicago. He's a great guy, great human being, great trainer. But as with most people, we're multidimensional. He's also a great dad. And he has two awesome kids, a boy and a girl. The boy's the older, girl's younger. And he kind of just shares, his trials and tribulations, and he gives us a look inside what it's like to have one kid who's easy and one kid that's not so easy, and how him and his wife handled that and stuck through it, and just kind of shares his life of being a successful entrepreneur and a professional, and how he balances that with also being an engaged and present father, which is something personally that I'm very interested in, because I do want to be successful professionally, but also want to be successful at home. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this interview. You're really going to get a lot out of it, and I'm hoping that eventually these guests that I'm bringing on now, I'm able to bring them on again later, to kind of recap the things that the journey they've been on since we spoke for the first time. So this is a great introduction to Jeff, his dad life, what he has to offer us as dads, and how we can level up. And so I really hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Jeff Shapiro. Awesome, dude. Well, how are you? How are your kiddos and your family and everything?
Doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, can't complain. They're 5 and 3 now, so
Dude, you got your hands full.
a little different ball game
Yeah.
than babies, but yeah, no, I mean, everyone's doing well. My son is at the Air and Water show right now.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah,
All right. Well, I just started the recording, so
cool.
just kind of for the hopes that there are other people listening to this
Yeah,
conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, maybe how many kids you have, if you're married,
yeah,
not married, that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. So I am. My name's Jeff Shapiro. I own Spindle Fitness in Chicago, and we've been open now for like 20 months,
That's
eight, nine
awesome.
months. Been a very interesting progression from open to where we are now. I have two kids. I have a boy named Marcus who just turned 5 in May, and then I have a daughter named Mia who is about to turn 3 in September.
That's awesome.
And I'm married. I have a wife. Her name is Daniela, and we are both working and trying to raise two kids. And I'm started a business a little under two. So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. Living the dream, huh?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, yes. In some
That's
ways,
awesome.
struggling with certain things, but I think that's kind of how it is for everyone.
Oh yeah,
So,
that's the truth, man. So as far as the kids and marriage, kind of talk a little bit about, were you and your wife married prior to having kids? Did you guys
yeah.
have kids first? What's your guys'
So,
kind of storyline there?
yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting, and it's definitely one that has its ups and downs. We got married in 2009. So, we had our first kid in 2011.
Okay.
So we were married a couple of years before, and we had dated for a couple of years before getting married. So we had our son Marcus in 2011 in May, um, and then yeah, I mean everything was really smooth with him. He's a nice, easy, relaxed kid. Slept well from a very early age. So, we thought we had it in the bag. We thought we knew exactly what we were doing. And then we had our daughter Mia in September of 2013, and that's when like everything hit the fan. So like a combination of the second kid was a struggle for us with our relationship. We definitely had some low moments, personally and just between us. Looking back, we're in a very good place now. We managed to get through some very complicated times. Um, but yeah, so we managed to stay married the entire time, and there are points where it might look like maybe that wasn't going to happen. Very realistically, not going to happen. But we managed to pull together, and we're going on over a year of a very good place where our relationship is, and our relationship with our kids. So it's been a wild ride.
That's awesome, dude.
But where we are now, even just looking back a year ago, combination of where the business is, where my kids are, where my relationship with my wife is a very, very good place.
That's
So
awesome, man.
yeah, full
So
circle.
talk to me a little bit, because my wife and I were 4 weeks into this whole parenting gig,
Yep,
and we are your description of Marcus as a kid early on has very much been our experience so far. He sleeps well, eats well. I mean, he's not undone by very many things. And
yep,
once you fix what his problem is, he goes right back to being chill cow.
yep,
So contrast that. This is interesting. So contrast that for me against kind of your guys' experience with your daughter and
yeah,
some of kind of the things that especially for me, I think the partnership between the husband and wife really sets the foundation for the kids and being able to raise them in the way you'd like to raise them. So
yeah,
contrast for me kind of the big things you guys ran, or the stumbling points, I guess, where you ran in with
yeah,
your second one, and how you guys handled them and battled through them so you guys could continue on.
yeah. I mean, I think. Well, I'll take it back initially to Marcus when my first was born. And I think when you're having your first kid, like both of us were so excited, we're so amped up that, like, yes, there was a 4 month period or so where we didn't sleep a lot, but we were so amped up that, like, it just didn't matter. Um, Coincidentally, at that time, I had interviewed while I was on paternity leave. I took 2 weeks off. At the time, I was working at Equinox, and I took 2 weeks off and interviewed for another job and accepted a job within that 2 week
Wow.
period. Basically, went back to work, left my job, and started a new job a month later. But there was so much adrenaline, excitement, all these great things going on that, like, the lack of sleep, just like, I didn't even think about it. We were, my wife's always worked full time as well. And at that point, he was a pretty easy kid. He didn't cry a lot. Like, everything was good for him. Um, so again, we just went into the second one thinking like, oh, probably be similar. Like, we'll go through a few months of not sleeping, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But my daughter was, she just cried a lot more. I mean, nothing like major. She was just harder than
Uh huh.
Marcus. Needed more attention and needed, just was a little more fussy. But I think a combination of like where I was at with work, I wasn't as happy as I was before, and I had, coincidentally, I started Spindle, or I left my job maybe 6 months after having our daughter. I think it was exactly 6 months after. So I was like ready to leave my job anyway. So I wasn't enjoying my work quite as much. Um, I think just overall, I wasn't in as happy of a place personally as I was when I first came along. So the combination of not being as happy with my everyday life, the stress of the second kid, and obviously with two kids, it's not just double the work. I would say it's like quadruple the work. It's like squared, not just full. So, just the amount of stuff going on and like managing two kids, um, I think we just got totally overwhelmed. So, you know, I eventually left my job and went on to start Spindle, but I think the combination of my daughter just being a little bit more needy, harder, didn't sleep as well, didn't eat quite as well, and the fact that I personally wasn't in the most happy spot just led us to some difficulty.
So talk to me about that. It's interesting because a lot of people, I think, when they have children, at that point in your life you had two,
Yeah,
um, they there's a, maybe it's not a weight, but it's definitely this feeling of like the need for security, the need to have that full time
yeah,
gig, even if it is a gig that you're kind of dreading. And
yeah,
so, talk to me about how you were able to make that jump from having a
yeah,
for sure thing and
yeah,
knowing that there's a paycheck there to deciding, okay, I have two kids, I have these responsibilities, but for my own self,
yeah,
for probably too, for you to be a better husband and a better dad, I've got to make this leap to do what I want to do. How did you, get yourself to that place, or how did you make that decision?
yeah. I mean, it took a long time. I think I was kind of working on Spindle mentally, and then I would spend a couple hours a night for like must have been 6 to 8 months before I was even ready to like really consider doing it. And then it was a combination of talking to my wife and making sure she was comfortable. She actually had taken a new job at one point, before finally like I committed to leaving and taking the time needed to do it. I had a good job. I mean, honestly, I look back and I was very happy there for a long time. It was financially very comfortable. We had a lot of success over the years that I was there, so it was a very stable environment for me personally. But I just at some point, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So, there's I'm 33 now. At the time when I left, I was 31, and the way that I looked at it was actually more along the lines of like, at some point, I'm gonna have to take this risk. Would I rather do it now when I'm 31 and try it out and see if I have something that works, or do I want to keep sitting on my hands, being comfortable, yes, but not necessarily at my happiest, um, and just sit there and wait longer and maybe never do it. And it was one of those decisions for me, and I was just like, we talked it over for a while. My wife eventually got comfortable with it as well, and then I jumped.
That's
and
awesome, dude.
and it was. I'll say this: like, it was a very calculated risk. Like, it wasn't just like you know jump off and see what happens and like take this gigantic risk. We had so many things backed up in place to make it possible without risking our surviving or like my kids eating and like
Mm-hmm.
having. So it was very calculated, but it was probably like a year to a year and a half of contemplating, planning, putting everything in place. And then I really didn't leave my job until I knew I could probably get it done, get it open within 6 months. And even when I left, I still kept a few training clients. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like a complete zero income situation. Um, so I did everything I possibly could to hedge my bet. Um, and my wife was on board with it, thankfully, and she's supported us. So
That's awesome, man.
the credit goes to her. I
It's
mean,
paid off too, huh? It's
yeah,
that's I think that too, like you describing that about the calculation of it. I think for most of us, who are trying to balance wanting to have a great family, wanting to be have great success at home, but also have great success outside the home. I think it's good to hear people that have made that transition away from kind of what most people would refer to as a day job to kind of their dream job, but you did it in this. It wasn't like you just stood up one day at your desk, quit, walked out, no plan. You took very miserable steps and broke it down, and I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to the kind of current trend, which is kind of follow your passion,
Yeah,
advice.
I'm all for having passion. For me, though, just being passionate wasn't enough. I had a good job, and I had to make sure that the risk I was going to take, you know, we could still potentially fail, and it could have been looked back on as like a horrible decision. But I wanted to do everything I possibly could to make sure that that wouldn't happen.
That makes sense.
Coincidentally, yesterday I was meeting with one of my current, one of the guys that I work with, talking about this, and I was going back and looking at all the work I had put in before I ever left my other job, and I did a ton of work on it, like from modeling financial models and like pitch decks and all
That's
that kind of stuff.
awesome.
So it was really a lot of work before I ever jumped in.
That's
So,
awesome. So
yeah.
talk to me about kind of from the dad side was
Yeah.
and you can talk for your wife too if you feel comfortable, but
Yeah.
did you guys feel like being a dad for you was always part of your story? Was being a mom always part of her story? Was that something you guys discussed later on into marriage, or how did it come to be that decision was made? Like, we're going to do this. We're going to be parents. We're going to make tiny humans and raise them up. And
So I always wanted to be a dad, and my wife always wanted to be a mom. And so we knew going into getting married that that was going to happen, and we knew we would probably do it relatively soon after getting married. And so, for me, I always also wanted to be on the younger side, and I had my first when I was 28, and I still consider that when I look at my group of friends, most of them are just kind of having their kids now, like, or the last few years. So I was actually the first of my core group of friends to have kids, which is something like I was always into and wanted. And I always wanted more than one. So I always kind of had my heart set on two. I'm not really sure why. Probably, I'm actually the youngest of five, but
oh wow,
three of them are half siblings. So I really only grew up with one of them, and it's my sister who's 2 years older than me. So I grew up in a setting of two kids, and so I think in my head, that was what I always wanted. And coincidentally, my wife also grew up with a younger brother. So I'm the younger brother with an older sister. My wife is like the older sister with the younger brother, and so we just kind of grew up in those similar settings, and I think we both just wanted that.
that's awesome, man.
So we knew very early on, and we intended on it. It happened once we started trying. It happened pretty quickly, so we just jumped right in, and that's the
Roll with
story.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what's been the maybe one thing or a few things that kind of really maybe threw you for a loop as a dad that you weren't expecting? I think if you're someone who did feel like fatherhood was going to be a part of your narrative growing up, you probably envisioned it and had an idea or maybe a thought of what you thought it was going to be like. And maybe just for some of us that are either entering that world or planning to, what's kind of the things that have come up that you're like, I was not expecting this, or I really wish I had known that.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I would say, well, I look at it two different ways. There's one where I'm like, always just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And no matter how many books, like I've read fathering books, I've read, all sorts of, baby books when we first had them. And like, no matter how much I read, I still, most of the time, feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. But then I look at it as like, as long as I'm giving as much love as I can and spending as much time with my kids and doing everything I possibly can to not only just provide, for their future, but also like provide love, care, and giving everything I have to them, and having fun with them too. That's also all I think I need to do. I think all my thought is like, even though I feel like I don't know what I'm doing half the time and I don't know how to answer my son's questions because he is the most curious thing I've ever come across, I think if I come at it from a point of view of like, I love you to death and I'm just going to answer honestly and do the best I can, things will hopefully turn out the right way. So there's so there's two ends of it. Whereas like I have no idea what I'm doing, and then I have all the confidence in the world that I'm doing the best job I can.
That's awesome, man. And that actually aligns like with the two other guys I've kind of interviewed and talked with, and even people I haven't recorded, but just that idea that like your kids know that they're a priority, that you love them, that you make every effort you can. Just that alone, in and of itself, is kind of the most important thing, and everything else kind of falls into place after.
Yep. And it's never like I always also think about it like I'm never always doing the best job ever. Like I'll go multiple days where either I'm traveling doing something and I won't see them. Usually like I FaceTime with them or something, but like I have days where like I'm just mentally not in a good place. Something happened and I'm just not feeling great, and my performance with the kids is just not as good as it could be. So just recognizing for me that like I'm not always going to be top notch. I'll do everything I can be, but like I'm going to have some bad days too, and not getting too wrapped up in it, and just the kids might notice sometimes, but as long I always come back to as long as I'm doing my best or trying to do as best I can, things should be okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of along the same lines, then you're so you have first and foremost, you have your wife and your marriage, which is like a super important relationship.
Yep.
You'll never get that again, so you want to prioritize and take care of it. Then you have two beautiful kids. You want to make sure they're a priority, that time spent with them. But then on top of it, you're also a professional, so you also a small business owner. You want to have success. So how are you? Maybe even as simple as take us through a day in the life of Jeff.
Yeah.
How are you balancing those super important relationships and that super important role of a father and a husband, but also one as a trainer and as an employer, all those things.
Yeah, I mean it's evolved a lot over the last year and a half since we opened, and what my day looks like now is completely different than it was like a year and a half ago. Um, I'll start a year and a half ago. Like I was working. So the way we operate is a little different, and we, cover the facility in shifts. And when we first opened, it was just me and my partners, and I was covering all but 16 hours a week. Um, and so I was literally like up 5:15, and some days I would be done at 4, or 2 days a week I'd be done at 4 o'clock. The rest I was there till close, and then 3 days a week I opened. The 2 days a week I got to come in at 10, and then I worked Saturdays as well. So um, early on, I was working a ton, and that was kind of again a sacrifice we made in the early going because we really bootstrapped everything from the start. We didn't have a lot of money to pay staff. We basically had built in these hurdles along the way. Like when we got to this many members, we'd hire our first person, so on and so forth. And it took a while to get there. So a day back then was like wake up at 5:15, be at Spindle basically from open to close, come back, hopefully catch my son before he went to bed. Um, and then, 2 nights a week I could get there and spend time with both of them. But 3 nights a week I was working till close, and I would generally miss seeing them. Um, and then 2 mornings a week, my kids are early risers, so I would see them the 2 mornings that I had off. And the one thing I'll say is like when we were having trouble between my wife and I, we both doubled down on the kids, and so like we never sacrificed anything there. That we were both very committed to the relationship with our kids. Nowadays it's very different because I actually don't work in my business anymore. I still do some program design, cover the floor every once in a while. We now have some employees that cover the hours. So my partners and I don't really run the floor at this point. So nowadays I have a lot more flexibility than I did. than I did a year and a half ago. So now I'm sleeping in a little bit, meaning like, sometime between 6 and 7. I don't actually set an alarm.
That's awesome.
I let my kids wake me up basically most mornings. Some days I still do go in at 6 a.m. It's not like I've given that up forever. But usually I get to wake up with the kids. My wife goes to work early, so I usually feed them breakfast. And then we have a nanny. So our nanny comes around 8 a.m. And then usually I'll hang out a little bit, or I'll just get ready, get my coffee, and head into Spindle. Or sometimes I do a lot of work in a coffee shop as well. So if I need to focus on things, I don't go to Spindle because there's too much. There's too many people coming in, and I want to socialize. Like if I'm there, I just want to hang out and chat with everybody. So a lot of times I do any focus work at a coffee shop, and I'll usually be at a coffee shop till around 11 or noon, and then at that point I'll go in. And some days I have a noon meeting with my partners. We use Slack and just communicate all day long, just on the Messenger platform. But usually I'm there in the afternoon, evenings during our busiest times, just so I can be around to help out or make sure things are going well. And then I handle all of our sales, so I do any lead generation or dealing with people that through and setting them up with trainers or whatever. So and then working on building the business through other avenues. So I picked up a couple of side projects that will hopefully help Spindle out, and then we're obviously looking to expand beyond what we're doing currently.
That's
So
awesome, man.
So now my focus has shifted from working in the business, trying to make things happen, to what's next and how do we provide more opportunity. We have a fantastic team, so how do we provide more opportunities for the people that are already involved, and how do we affect more people's lives? Nowadays, I also get home at 6 p.m. almost every night, so I get to be with my kids from 6 o'clock until they go to bed around 8. So I get a couple hours with the kids in the evenings as well, and then I work I work a lot of Saturdays, but weekends I tend to, especially in the summer, call off limits so that I can do full family time on the weekends.
That's awesome, man. I think the nice thing, I mean, that the schedule you had a year and a half ago, that was crazy. And I'm gonna I'm gonna ask you about that, but like I think the nice thing in the place you're at, and I think that's definitely the place I want to get to, and I think that's a place a lot of people kind of in our generation want to get to, is where their work and life is more integrated rather than separated. So yes, they work hard and they may work that their work days may be into the weekend, but they have the ability to like step away and go to their kids' school functions or attend the little league baseball game. They have that flexibility in their life.
I bring my son to school every day. So like in the summer, it's a little different because he's not in school, but I bring him to school every day. Like every Tuesday, I take him climbing in the afternoons. We belong to a climbing gym out here. So we have obviously I wasn't doing that a year ago, but now we've been able to hire some people and find really good people. And I've developed a schedule where I have the flexibility. I don't know if it'll last forever, but I'm enjoying it right now.
Yeah, and I think that's good too. I think there's definitely like there are seasons in the year. I think there's seasons in life. So when you were getting Spindle off the ground, so that kind of took priority, and you had to work your butt off. But now Spindle's more established, and you can enjoy this time. And then with your other projects, it may go back and forth depending on what's going on. The question I have though about that year and a half ago schedule is how did you convince yourself or talk to yourself, or what was that thought process in your head where it's like, I'm there at this gym, more than 12 hours a day, more than 5 days a week. I'm seeing my kids sparingly. My wife and I barely get to communicate. When we do, it's probably about kids and work and arranging schedules. How did you convince yourself to say, like, this is worth it, this is something I should stick to, I'm going to grind, I have no idea when the end is in sight, but I'm going to grind,
Well, I think the excitement of launching a business carried me through at least like the first 4 or 5 months. and being excited to like have something of my own that I was really proud of what we were trying to do. Um, and then like during the hard times, I think we hired Ray, who you've met, around February. So we were like 5 months in. So he like alleviated a little pressure. And it's interesting. He worked 6 hours a week, but he would come in at 6 p.m. and I would get to leave, and then I'd get to see my kids. And so even just those little increments of increasing the time there carried me through. And then we eventually brought in Kelly, who started covering mornings. So like all of a sudden, I'm also now able to spend every morning with the kids instead of having to be there at 6 a.m. So I think just the adrenaline of opening a business, knowing that like everything was on the line for me, kind of carried me through those first months, and then slowly we found great people to come in and help out, and that started to alleviate like or give me more time with my kids. I was still doing a lot of hours up until maybe fall of last year, um, and but it was manageable in that I still had a lot of time with the kids. I had enough staff help that I could, if I needed to get off for something or if I had something with the kids, I had people that could help out. Um, but yeah, I think honestly, I turned it on in my mind that like this is what I'm gonna do, and in some ways it was like robotic. Like I would just like my alarm would go off, I'd get out of bed, I'd do whatever I needed to, and I just got out the door and I just did it, and I didn't think a lot about it. I
That's
didn't
awesome.
dwell on it. I just made the decision that this is what I had to do for now, where and I had a goal in sight where I wouldn't be doing this forever. But I didn't know how long it'd take, and looking back, we've evolved so much since opening that even 6 months ago, what we were doing is very different than what we're doing now. So it was just a constant evolution, but I almost like put blinders on and just like did it. So uh, it's very nice to be at the point we're at now, where I can mix both in very very easily.
I think that's good advice. The whole put blinders on, just move. Take action, don't analyze, just do
We
it.
had a mission.
Yeah,
We had a mission. The goal was to get me off the floor by January of this year, and we accomplished it.
that's
And I
awesome.
think part of it was just like literally like deciding this is what has to be done right now. It's temporary. I'm just going to do it. And if things work out, I won't have to do this a year from now.
That's awesome. So, just being respectful of your time, I'm going to kind of get us into the ending portion of
Yep.
our chat. Two questions I always ask everyone. So, first one being, you know, I feel like a lot of what drives me and moves me forward with a lot of things is just the fact that kind of like what you were talking about when you were at your other job was, I'm 31 now. I'm going to be 33. That time's
Yeah.
going to pass. What am I going to do with it? And something that drives me a lot too is the fact that there's going to be an end to this life, and so I
Yeah.
want it to mean something. I want it to matter. And
Yeah.
so now with kids, what is my legacy? What do I want them to look back and remember me as? So to you, what do you hope that when your Marcus is grown up and he's a man, and your daughter's grown up, she's a woman. What do you hope they look back on and remember Jeff for and their dad for?
Yeah. I mean, I think number one that like I tried to make something of significance to me and something that I believe would be significant to other people, and that I gave my max effort to try to create something that meant a lot to me, and that I chased a dream that I've had for a long time, um, but that I didn't do it in a way that sacrificed anything for my family. Like I did everything I possibly could to make it as minimal of a risk, but I still tried to make it happen. Um, Hopefully, things turn out really well for us, and I can leave a legacy of having established something that not only means a lot to me and my family, but means a lot to the people that we affect on a daily basis. And more than anything, that just I'm a loving person. Yes, I will make mistakes. I won't handle everything perfectly all the time, but that at the end of the day, my heart is in the right place. I'm trying to do the best things for the people I'm close to, and that I actually do care about almost everybody that I come across.
That's awesome.
So that would be my hope, that they see that in the future, when they're old enough to comprehend all of that.
I think they will. And then the last question is just, you talking to the rest of us, as somebody, who's now been doing the parenting thing for 5 years and done it successfully and is trying to do the best they can on a daily basis. What's your advice to us dudes starting out, or maybe guys who aren't even quite there yet, but they know that's going to be part of their thing? What advice do you have for us? What should dads do or think about, or what should they relish? At this point in your life, it may change, but where you are
Yeah.
now.
Well, I would say, and it's totally cliche, but like having kids is absolutely the best thing in the world. It is. I have a lot of happiness with my work life and just my daily life, but like the happiest place in my life is with my kids and seeing them happy and doing those kinds of things. So, the only advice I would have for people is to definitely have kids or try to have kids. And the one thing that I think, I regret sometimes, or I don't know if regret is the right word, but like you can, because you might not always have the time to do that, and it means a lot to them. And when I say focus on time, and I'm not really always good at this, but like, don't be on your phone, like interact and talk once you're present with them. And it can be really hard to do, and I'm not always great at it. But when I'm not great at it, I regret a day. I'm like, why was I on my phone when Marcus and Mia were eating? Like, I should have just been chatting with them. And I always regret not interacting with them more when I'm wrapped up in my head in some work thing. So that's that. I pissed myself off.
That's awesome. Yeah, spend time with them, enjoy them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking this time to sit down and talk and everything. And
Yeah.
I guess we'll go ahead and stop it right then, and we can say our goodbyes and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, dude.
So I hope you guys really enjoyed that interview with Jeff. Like I said, super awesome guy, and I think you can see why. I think that now, like I said, I'm hoping to have all these guests back on in the future to kind of with follow-up questions, and also see kind of the things they've learned in the time since we last spoke. If you guys have any questions of Jeff, please link them up in the comments below, or shoot me a message. I'll make sure I get them to him. If you guys want him to elaborate on something, or maybe want to hear from him directly, I'm sure he'd be happy to pass along any other advice or answer any other questions that dads or soon-to-be dads or hope-to-be dads have. And if you guys are really enjoying the content that's coming out of My Dad Life, please share it with other people who you know who are fathers, who want to be engaged, present dads, and really be successful in the home, and really take the dad thing seriously, and kind of elevate that standard that we have for fathers. So share the channel, share this video if you like the podcast. You'll definitely like the other videos we have. We have a My Dad Life vlog, which is just me kind of discussing topics and things that I think about as far as fatherhood goes and experiences that I'm having. And also check out the My Daily Dad Life videos, which is essentially just kind of me documenting my personal life as a dad. So yeah, check all that out, and share it with people that you know want to be engaged and interested. We're on Facebook, My Dad Life. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, all those good things. So check it out, share it with your friends, enjoy. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.